Greetings, I'm Sandra, and I'm 31 years old. A few months back, I went through a divorce with my husband, Kevin. Our paths crossed back in college during a couple of classes where fate had us sitting together. This led to conversations, and gradually, we found ourselves deeply in love. Despite the beautiful bond we shared, there was a hiccup in our journey. Kevin's mother, Amy, for reasons unknown, she took an instant dislike to me, often attempting to create a rift between Kevin and me. Despite my efforts to discuss Amy's unsettling behavior with Kevin, he found it difficult to stand up to her, mainly because he had grown up with just her by his side. I tried to brush off her negative comments and criticisms, even though they hurt, thinking that perhaps Kevin was sharing things about me with her, which only fueled my frustration. This issue led to several disagreements between Kevin and me, but eventually, he agreed to keep our lives more private from her. After dating for 2 years, we decided to get married. Amy noticed her attempts to turn Kevin against me were futile, so she pushed for a divorce instead. However, her efforts didn't succeed, and we decided to keep her at arm's length, which brought some peace into our lives. Meanwhile, both Kevin and I climbed the career ladder, earning promotions. With my salary slightly higher than Kevin's, we adjusted our expense sharing to 55-45, with me contributing the larger share. Although we were happy together, I felt a personal void, a need to do more with my time. Having a knack for design, I pondered over engaging in something that would not only fulfill me, but could also be managed from home. Web design emerged as the perfect venture. I secretly enrolled in courses and invested in the necessary equipment, wanting to surprise Kevin once I had made significant progress. My projects were my little secret, shared only with my closest confidant, Mary. This new journey in web design was a step towards something I was passionate about, marking the beginning of a new chapter in my life. "Are you diving into another hobby that you'll soon move on from?" someone asked me, a bit skeptically. But this time, I felt different. "I'm quite hopeful about this one," I replied. "I'm aiming to make a good income from it." "You're planning to earn from it? That's a first. Do tell more," they urged, curiosity piqued. "Well, you're aware of my knack for design and creativity, right? And no, it's not about painting. That's far too exhausting for me. I've started exploring web design," I explained, enthusiasm in my voice. "That sounds like an excellent idea. Web design is indeed a lucrative field," they agreed. "Yes, I've already completed a few courses and am eager to start working. I'm even considering the possibility of launching my own business," I shared, thinking aloud. "Starting your own business, huh? I was more so imagining you'd join a design firm," they remarked. "But that seems a bit mundane and too similar to what I'm already doing. I fear I'd lose interest quickly," I confessed. "However, I've got a few friends who are entrepreneurs themselves. They could use someone to help design their logos and websites." "That would be brilliant," they exclaimed. Thanks to Mary's introductions, I found myself working with some affluent clients who were open to taking a chance on a newbie like me. Despite my initial inexperience, they were impressed with my work, leading to more referrals and gradually, a significant increase in my income from this side hustle. This financial boost was a relief, making life much easier for Kevin and me. I started saving, hoping to surprise Kevin with something special, but whenever I tried to bring it up, he seemed disinterested or too busy to chat. I began to sense something was off with Kevin, especially when he confessed to having blown all his money on investments right after payday. Despite a minor argument, we managed to pull through that month with some extra effort from my end. However, when the same situation occurred the following month, my frustration peaked. I hoped my harsh words would spur him to act more responsibly, but the pattern repeated, leaving me exasperated yet more determined to be cautious. In the meantime, my venture into web design was thriving, significantly contributing to our finances. It turned out to be not just another fleeting hobby but a valuable and fulfilling career path. By the third consecutive month of Kevin not having any money, my patience had worn thin. "How could you let this happen again? Haven't you learned anything by now?" I confronted him, disbelief and frustration lacing my voice. Kevin tried to justify his actions. "I'm just trying to maximize our returns, but yes, I've made some mistakes." "Mistakes? You're losing your entire paycheck to these investments. And now you're depending on me again to bail us out," I pointed out, my tone sharp. Kevin seemed to think the situation was manageable. "You've got your income, right? We'll just keep going as we have been." "No, I can't keep doing this. I won't cover for you this month. You need to figure out your expenses," I firmly stated, drawing a line. "What? You can't just leave me stranded without money?" he protested. Well, you shouldn't have squandered your paycheck if you wanted to avoid this situation. As for transport, there's always public transport. It's not about looking poor. It's about facing the consequences of your actions, I explained, hoping to instill some sense of responsibility. Kevin lashed out, calling me selfish and ruthless for not supporting him as his wife. How could you do this to your husband? He accused. And what about what you're doing to me? I've been pulling extra hours at work to cover your losses. Can't you see things from my perspective? I countered, trying to make him understand the strain his actions were putting on both our finances and our relationship. But Kevin refused to see reason. You don't have a perspective I can understand, he said before storming out. Left alone, I couldn't help but suspect Amy's influence behind Kevin's uncharacteristic behavior. Deciding to investigate while Kevin was away, I discovered he had saved his bank account password on my laptop. To my shock, his account showed a healthy balance, contrary to what he had told me. The transaction history revealed no signs of the reckless spending he had described. Confused and seeking answers, I checked his messages and found a conversation with his mother, Amy. It became evident from their exchange that Kevin had lied about the reasons for our argument, painting me in a negative light. Amy's response made it clear she was more than willing to believe the worst about me, confirming my suspicions that she was influencing Kevin's behavior. This revelation deepened the mystery of Kevin's actions and Amy's role in our ongoing struggles. Little did Amy realize the extent of the turmoil she was stirring up. Delving deeper into Kevin and Amy's conversation history, I uncovered a few unsettling truths. First, Amy had been bombarding Kevin with messages, constantly highlighting what she perceived as my flaws, such as being greedy for money and staying with Kevin solely for his financial resources. This accusation couldn't be further from the truth, considering I had been the main financial pillar in our household. Secondly, Amy's influence on Kevin was more profound than I thought. Kevin had started sharing minor grievances about me with her, and she did nothing but encourage his dissatisfaction. This behavior was a significant factor in why Kevin was becoming increasingly distant. The final blow came when I discovered their scheme to financially isolate me. Initially, Kevin seemed reluctant, but over time, Amy's persistent encouragement of his complaints led him to agree. He even went as far as to inform Amy about my extra work hours and our major argument, using these incidents as justification for their plan. Feeling deeply betrayed, I found myself at a loss. I needed support and perspective, so I turned to Mary, my go-to confidant for any crisis, showing up at her doorstep close to midnight. Her concern was evident as she welcomed me in, offering a glass of wine to ease the tension. Mary listened intently as I poured out my discoveries. It's about Amy and Kevin. I started, my voice a mix of disbelief and pain. Oh no, what have they done now? Mary's expression turned serious. I explained how Kevin had pretended to squander his money on bad investments for months. But it turns out he had his money all along. He's been withholding financial support on purpose. Why would he do that? You've been the one managing most of our expenses, Mary questioned, puzzled by the logic. That's the baffling part. And yes, Amy's been fueling this whole scheme, I confirmed, feeling a mix of anger and heartache. Mary's support was invaluable as I navigated through this storm of emotions and deceit. Her insight helped me see the situation from a different angle, providing a glimmer of hope in tackling this complex web of lies and manipulation. Amy had no clue about the true extent of my earnings, and it seemed Kevin hadn't grasped the full scope of my financial contributions either. It baffled me how he could overlook the fact that it was my efforts to keep our finances afloat, not just my day job. Confused and hurt, I confessed to Mary, I'm at a loss about how to handle this situation. Her response was sharp and straightforward. Why not just cut off his financial support entirely? When he's left with nothing, you can consider divorcing him. But isn't that a bit harsh? I wondered aloud. Mary's suggestion seemed too severe for me. Sandra, he didn't think twice about putting you in this position. Why should you spare him any consideration? Mary had a point, but her words also made me pause. You're exhausted. Maybe sleep on it, and we'll talk more tomorrow. Mary was right. The day's events had left me completely drained. Gratefully, the following day was a weekend. We spent it lounging, watching our favorite movies, indulging in delicious food, and simply cherishing each other's presence. Taking this break was necessary, though it was a struggle not to dwell on the recent revelations. However, the brief respite was interrupted that night by a call from Amy. My heart raced as I debated answering it, but Mary encouraged me to face whatever was coming. Hello? I answered hesitantly. The call was confrontational from the start. Amy accused me of being after her son's money and cutting him off financially. I defended myself, explaining that Kevin's reckless spending was unsustainable, and I couldn't keep enabling his poor financial decisions indefinitely. Amy then shockingly revealed that this was all a test she had concocted to prove I would leave Kevin over money issues. Her meddling had crossed a line, and I couldn't help but question her right to tamper with our lives to such an extent. Despite my frustration, Amy's accusation and manipulation made me desperate to save my marriage. Okay, you know what? I don't want my marriage to end over this. What do you suggest we do to resolve things? I asked, hoping for a solution that could mend the damage her test had caused. In the wake of Amy's ultimatum for Kevin and me to split our finances evenly, 50-50, my emotions were a whirlwind of disbelief and fury. How could she label me a gold digger? And worse, how could Kevin stand by such accusations? Throughout our marriage, I had been nothing but supportive, covering for us even in the face of Kevin's financial misjudgments and deceit. Discussing Amy's proposition with Mary, I couldn't help but see the silver lining she pointed out. Splitting expenses equally, including our mortgage and other significant payments, would undeniably put a strain on Kevin, given he was unaware of my web design side hustle. This endeavor, initially my secret project aimed at financial independence and a pleasant surprise for Kevin, now stood as my safety net. As Tuesday rolled around, Mary joined me for moral support, curious to witness the unfolding events. Upon arriving home, we found Amy, Kevin, and a lawyer already there, discussing the terms of the contract Amy had proposed. Kevin seemed anxious, attempting to catch my eye for a private conversation, but I was too engrossed in the moment to divert my attention. The contract laid out before me confirmed my expectations, an equal split of all expenses, with a clause explicitly stating no financial aid was to be offered to the other in times of shortfall. I signed the document without hesitation, understanding the immediate implications for Kevin. The dynamic at home changed drastically. Though initially I avoided conversing with Kevin, sharing a living space made interaction inevitable. Despite everything, Kevin seemed eager to bridge the gap between us, making efforts to initiate conversation. Kevin's financial struggles began to surface shortly after the contract's enforcement. This arrangement, while initially seeming like a harsh response to Amy's meddling, inadvertently set the stage for a reevaluation of our marriage's financial dynamics and communication. Initially, I resisted engaging Kevin in conversation, despite his persistent attempts. However, the constant effort wore me down, and I decided to address the elephant in the room. "We can't keep ignoring each other like this," Kevin pleaded, seeking some form of communication between us. "What do you expect me to say, Kevin? After everything, you still sided with that contract to test my intentions," I retorted, my frustration evident. Kevin's justification was weak. "I just wanted to make sure you weren't with me for the money. You know the issues my mom has caused us." I couldn't help but challenge his logic. "And yet you listened to her, even though it's clear she's been nothing but trouble for us. What financial lure do you think you have that I'm supposedly after?" Kevin attempted to extend an olive branch, suggesting he could help me if I was facing financial troubles. "That would defeat the whole purpose of your test, wouldn't it? Besides, I'm managing just fine without breaking our contract," I pointed out, highlighting the absurdity of his position. The situation at home grew increasingly strained, with Kevin trying to reconcile his mother's influence with the reality of our deteriorating relationship. The contract had not only separated our finances but also revealed a side of Kevin that was willing to jeopardize our marriage over unfounded suspicions. In the meantime, I took advantage of the financial freedom the contract afforded me. Without the burden of covering Kevin's share of the expenses, I indulged in personal pleasures, dining out, visiting cultural spots, and enjoying life with Mary. Our adventures, shared openly on social media, were a stark contrast to Kevin's constrained circumstances. He often declined invitations to join, citing financial limitations as his reason. My side gig in web design flourished, allowing me to reduce my hours at my day job, a move that further highlighted the disparity between our financial situations. I even contemplated quitting my day job to focus entirely on my design work. As I watched Kevin struggle, part of me felt a twinge of sympathy. Yet I reminded myself that he had chosen this path. Even our groceries were split, emphasizing the divide between us. His side of the pantry and fridge were starkly bare compared to mine, a visual representation of the consequences of his decisions. The climax of our saga arrived with Amy's unexpected visit. The tension was palpable, a culmination of choices and consequences, setting the stage for an inevitable confrontation. Returning from an outing with Mary, I was taken aback to find Amy waiting for me. "Oh, hi Amy, what's up?" I greeted, masking my surprise. "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "I'm aware of your scheming. I'm considering calling the police on you for stealing from Kevin." Bewildered, I asked, "Why on earth would I steal from Kevin?" She accused me of seeking revenge for the contract ordeal, claiming I was living lavishly while Kevin suffered. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. Kevin barely has any money for me to steal. And remember, it was you who pushed us into this contract, not me. Undeterred, Amy threatened to involve the police. "Go ahead," I challenged, knowing I hadn't wronged Kevin financially. Her confusion was evident when she questioned how I managed my finances, especially since my job supposedly didn't pay much more than Kevin's. I then revealed my successful side business in web design, which was my actual source of income, and the surprise I had intended for Kevin before Amy's interference. "You started a business without telling me?" Amy seemed taken aback, her tone shifting as she inquired about my earnings. "It's been quite profitable," I said, intentionally vague but confident. Accusing me of lying, Amy couldn't grasp the situation's reality. I retorted that her actions had sabotaged any positive outcome her son could have benefited from. In a decisive move, I presented Kevin with divorce papers, which I had prepared shortly after signing their contract, waiting for the right moment. Kevin's reaction was one of utter shock, whereas Amy, who would typically revel in such a development, appeared furious, now understanding the true cost of her actions. I informed them of my plans to move out in 2 weeks, maintaining my commitment to splitting the remaining loan payments, but nothing beyond that. Despite Kevin's pleas, my mind was made up. This was the consequence of his choices. Months have passed since that tumultuous period. Amy tried to contest the divorce, but given the clear separation of assets outlined in the contract, Kevin found himself at a disadvantage, especially financially, leading to the sale of our house and his return to living with his mother. In contrast, my life has flourished. My web design business has thrived, collaborating with renowned brands and marking a period of personal and professional growth. It's been a liberating journey, one that has thankfully distanced me from a toxic situation. As for Kevin, I hope he learns from this ordeal, but ultimately, that's no longer my concern.